Okay, so the next feature we're going to talk about here, folks, tonight are dependent views. So if folks want to go to page 5. Now, where you will use dependent views is when you are doing smaller scale floor plans on a building with a large plate. So it's quite common for your overall views to be a 1 to 100 or 1 to 200 for a large building. But once you get into dimensioning closets and door locations and putting in wall tags and that kind of stuff, typically what will happen is you'll switch to a 1 to 50 view to start doing that information. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my 01 entry level and I'm going to duplicate it with detailing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create what's called the parent view of a set of dependent views. So what dependent views are meant to be, if you look on page 5, you've got a parent view and you've got a bunch of child views. So a building like this, which has got a large floor plate, if I were to try and print this off at 1 to 50, it wouldn't fit on a sheet. There's just no way. So what we do is we have a master plan. So that's what I'm going to do here. So this has been created and I'm just going to rename it here 1 to 50. So I'm going to have what's called the parent view. Now the parent view itself is never going to go on a sheet. It's just too big. Now here I need to turn off the view template here, so I can change it. Okay, so here I've got my overall 1 to 50 plan. And if I were to try and put this on a sheet, you folks would see here, it just wouldn't fit. So there's my title block. Try and drag the view onto the sheet, and you guys can see it doesn't fit. So what we do then to try and get this thing to fit is we create child views. Now the idea with having a parent view and a child view is that the parent view allows you to kind of work without having to jump from plan to plan of the child views, and you'll kind of see the point here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the child views. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and duplicate as a dependent. This is what creates the child view. Now the unique thing about these dependent views is that the parent and all the child views share their 2D information. Text, tags, notes. They are shared between all of the views, between the parent and between all the child views. So here is the dependent view, and you can see that it creates it like it's in a little subfolder. So I'm going to rename this level 1 north. Now this is the child view, and so you can see I've got a crop view here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the crop and pull it in so it's up closer to the building. Now when you are working with these dependent views, the annotation crop becomes quite important. Now some of you may know about this, some of you may not. All of you know about the main model crop. That is the solid line that you get around a view, and that when you select the crop, you've got the dot here, and that adjusts how much of the model that you see. So that is the model crop. But there is also the annotation crop if it has been turned on. And the annotation crop allows you to control how much of your 2D entities are going to be shown. So I can adjust this thing outwards, and you can see that there's those dimensions which would normally be truncated, but if I pull that annotation crop out, I get to see more of those annotations. So sometimes when you've got these two child views that are close to each other, you want to sort of make sure that you're not missing any wall tags that are kind of right on the boundary between your two dependent views. So this is my north dependent view. So I'm going to make another, actually here I can duplicate a dependent as a dependent. Now what happens if you take a dependent view, a child view, and make it a dependent? Well, it's not going to add that extra level down. When you duplicate a child view as a dependent, it just becomes another dependent view on the master. So this one I'm going to call level 1 west. So what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to adjust its crop region here. And so what you want to do is make sure that you've got a little bit of overlap between each of your child views, so that, you know, someone can kind of see that there's the same bit of wall here that's in the other view. Now what happens is, as you're making all these dependent views in the master view, okay, there we go. In the master view, Revit is going to show you all the other child views and where their respective crop regions are. So here we are looking at the parent view. Look at this. I had to turn on the crop view, by the way. It was turned off. So as long as your crop region is visible, you're going to see where those crops are. So there is my north crop. And have a look down here on the status bar. When I select it, and at the cursor it says, hey, that's level 1 north. Put my cursor here, that's level 1 west. So in your parent view, you can kind of manage the overlaps between each one of the dependent views. Really handy. So here in this view, I can kind of work out how much of an overlap from one of my dependent views to the other dependent view that I have, so that when these go on sheets, I have the confidence to know that my entire floor plan is being documented. So here I've got a little bit of overlap between these two dependent views, and I need to make one more dependent view. So that's going to be my south part here. So I'm going to adjust this so it's just my southern wing. And now I can work on trying to fit these 3 views onto their own sheets. So again, in the parent view, I can see each one of these dependent views. The parent view will never go on the sheet, but the child views will. So that is the purpose of your dependent views. Now, in a similar vein here, let's go over to page 6 and we're going to talk about scope boxes. Now I don't want to visually clutter up the view here anymore, because I'm going to add in some scope boxes. They kind of look like crop regions, so I'm going to switch to the old entry level plan here, the 1 to 100. And I'm going to do the scope box conversation here in this view. So I'm back in the 01 entry level view. Okay, what scope boxes do is they define a certain volume, a certain area, a 3D space within your project. Now, if you have very sort of divisible areas in your project, especially if you have like a tower and a podium. So if you have, you know, a multi-story tower that rises up and then it's got a podium on the bottom, you can define these scope boxes for the different parts of your project. So a scope box is going to be a green rectangular volume, I guess, that you can say. So that could be for the towers. And that can be for your podium. So you can have as many scope boxes as would be logical to add for your project. Okay. So as an example here, we've got a clearly defined north and south wing. So from the View tab here, I'm going to grab the Scope Box tool. And so now I will draw a rectangle around this part of the building. So this scope box that you see, you'll actually see it in 3D. And I'll switch to hidden line mode here just so it's a little easier to see the box. So there it is, there's my scope box. And by default, Revit usually fits it in so that the the appropriate part of your design is inside the box. And you can fine tune it, so I'll raise it up a little bit and lower it down. So then, instead of just using the default name for the scope box, you can see that you can select it and give it a name. So I will call this North. Now there's two applications for scope boxes. One of them is for the levels of the project, and the other is for the views of the project. Now, with this tower, it's going to have a whole bunch of different levels that are in the tower that don't really relate to the podium. So you've got all these different level items here. Right? And they only relate to the tower. So what you can do is you can say to Revit, associate this level with the scope box. So if I go into an elevation view here, and I click on one of my levels, you can see that you can associate a level with a scope box. You can also associate a grid with a scope box. So one of these grids here, same thing, I can associate these datums with a scope box. So that would mean that in any level or grid that only relates to one of these particular volumes of the project, my tower volume or my podium volume, those annotations will automatically trim themselves to stop at the ends of the scope box. So levels and grids can be associated with scope boxes. And so can views. So see, I've got this scope box up here on the northern side of the building. I can go into my level 1 north and I can associate this view with that scope box. So what just happened there is that my crop region for the view, I'll just undo that last step there. So that's where it was before. Went down, changed the scope box parameter to use the one that I just created, and it adjusts the crop region to the exact edges of that scope box. So both your datums and your views can then be associated with scope boxes. Any questions? Otherwise I'm going to move on and talk about filters. So scope boxes are kind of used for bigger projects, especially ones where there's definitely different parts of your project. And a bonus with these scope boxes, say I've got a bunch of levels here that are in the tower, so they come down close to where I'm working here on a section through my podium. So say I've got a section through my podium here. And because these levels have been pulled into stop at a scope box, this section won't see them. So there'd be no real point in this section through the podium having a whole bunch of these levels from the tower show up, right? So that's the advantage. Now, to be honest, you folks know that levels have a 3D mode, and that you can manually trim or pull your levels over so their 3D mode endpoint stops here. Yes, you can do that. But that's a little bit of fussing around to set up, and if you associate those levels with the scope boxes, it's done like that. And it's more predictable. Scope boxes make your levels a little bit more predictable for an application like that. So folks, we are on to page 7. We're talking about filters. Now, anybody here ever have to track down fire separations in a plan to make sure that you've got continuity of your fire rating? So for a corridor, or wanting to make sure that you've got the right wall types around an exit. So let's make sure you want to have a 1 hour rating around an exit and along your corridors in a building. It would be really nice if we could visualize that in our plans, like color code our walls so we can confirm that we've got our ratings. So, I'm just going to zoom in here. So, we've got a wall here around this stair. Let me find another one here that's maybe just all solid. Oh, they both got glass in them, so it's an equivalency. Anyway, so click on the wall here. This wall along the stairs, so we want this one to be have a 1 hour rating. Now, in your walls type properties, you're always going to find a fire rating parameter where you can put something in. So here, I'm going to say 1 hour. So 1 HR, 1 hour fire rating. So that wall's got a 1 hour fire rating, and I want to make sure that my corridors have a 1 hour fire rating. So I'm going to go down to my fire rating value here. And I've already typed it in, right? So as soon as you type in a value in a parameter, somewhere in those walls, it's this there. I don't have to type it in again. Okay, so that wall has a 1 hour rating. This wall has a 1 hour rating. Now, how can I visualize this? How can I get this so it shows up in my view? Well, this is where filters kick in. So if you go to your visibility dialog box here, you can see that there is a filters tab. So no filters in this view yet. So in any given view, you can go to the filters tab and you can hit edit new to create a new filter. Now, you can do a rule filter or a selection filter. We're talking about rule-based filters here. So we're going to add a new filter. Okay, so what this is going to be, this is going to be 1 hour rated walls. So now we need to find out, or we need to choose which category of object that this filter works on, and it works on walls. So now we've just got this filter that or this set of criteria that we have to define to decide if walls are going to be chosen and which ones are going to be chosen. So you can choose by any different value that's part of your wall type, but in this case we're going to choose the fire rating. There it is there. So, if the object is a wall, and if the object's fire rating equals one HR. Again, splitting hairs here. What do you guys notice is different than how I did this last time, a few moments ago? I didn't say 1 HR, but there's something that I did that's a little different. It's lowercase. So for this filter to work, if I want to choose by walls that have a fire rating of 1 hour, well, if I do it as lowercase here, not going to work because in my type properties here, I used uppercase. It's case sensitive. So visibility, over to filters, edit new. So here's it still has my filter here. So I just need to go back and change this to one capital H, capital R. It'll be in the list here. There it is. So I actually had to type in lowercase and lowercase r. If I just hit the little drop down arrow here, Revit would have remembered that, you know, 1 hour was here. And just to prove the point, if I go back now and I click on my stairwell and say that this in fact has a 2-hour rating, you'll see that when I go back to the filters dialog box now, you'll see that the 2 hours in there as well, because I'd already typed that into a wall to begin with. Okay, so there's a 1 hour wall, hit OK. Well, now what? Well, now what I have to do is I have to add a filter to this view. Now you notice that I cannot. The add button is grayed out, and that is because this thing has a view template added to it. So I got to turn the view template off, and now I will be able to go to the filters tab and add that one in. So that's why it was grayed out before, is because this plan view had been linked to a view template. So now I can add my 1 hour rated walls. So now what? Well, this filter is here, but it's actually not doing anything. Now what I could ask Revit to do is I could ask Revit to turn off those walls that meet that criteria. That would make sense. But instead what we want to do is change the cut pattern to something that we can see really easily. So I'll choose a solid fill, and I'll choose yellow. So that means that in this view, if there's any wall that meets this filter's criteria, in which case it is that the fire rating equals 1, capital H, capital R, then it will get filled solid yellow. And there we are. So there's all my 1 hour rated walls in the project. Now let's say I want to show where all my 2 hour rated walls are. Okay, go to my visibility, go to my filters. I need to add one for my 2 hour walls. Edit. So what I can actually do is I can start with the one that I had here, and I'll just make a copy of it. And I will rename it. And in this case, I'll say that it's a 2 hour rated wall. So now I've got my 2 filters sitting here. Both of them are running walls, and both of them are using the fire rating parameter. So I'm going to add a parameter here for my, or add the filter. In this case, I'll make it red. So I've got 2 filters added to this plan view, and now you can see that it's been added. Now if I want to go up to the next floor up and do that same business here, I would have to go to my visibility and add them and do the color overrides and everything. That sounds boring. What should I do instead? What can I do to get this work that I've done here to set up the overrides on filters and stuff? What could I do to quickly copy this to another view? We just did it. We made a which? What could I do to take these settings in this plan view? A view template. That's right. Make a view template. So right click. No, wait. I will go to view templates. Create template from the current view. 1 to 100. Ratings. Colored. There. So now I can go to my other views here. So now my other floors will show the colored walls to show the ratings. So visually, when you're doing your code compliance and you want to confirm that you've got the right fire ratings in the right places, you can just turn this on for the few hours where you're fixing all this stuff and making sure it's all set up. And then when you're done, you can use the view template to turn it back to a regular uncolored plan. So in this case then, I'd switch this one to use my working drawing, and there we go, back to the way it was before. So that is the beauty of filters. There's a lot of different applications for them. You can read about it on page 8. That is good enough. I am going to skip the rest of the notes. Those are there for your reference. Please read up on them. This is about advanced scheduling and creating door hardware schedules. And also, if you look on page 10, bottom of page 10, I'll just show you what I'm talking about here. And you folks can decide if this is something you want to pursue. I could even give you the wall tag family that does this. Okay, you guys see how this wall tag here shows the wall type number and then lists out all of these materials here? This is just a wall tag that has had this extra label added to it. So you guys remember when we made those levels and they had labels in them? This label picks up the type mark. This one picks up the description of the wall. And that whole business on page 10 talks about how you can make this work for yourself in your own project. So when you tag a wall in section or you tag a floor, it can list out all of the different materials in the floor or in the roof. Now Revit does not automatically list all these materials out based on what you put into your floors and walls. You have to type this in. So what I actually did, I typed this in Notepad. Copied it from Notepad and pasted it into the description parameter. So here, when you look at your type properties, you know, you guys, this is where you can see all the materials that are in the floor. But what I did is I went down and see right here in the description parameter, well, I stuck my cursor in there and I Control-V pasted all this text that I'd written up in Notepad. I pasted into that field, and as soon as I've done that, then it allows me to use this wall tag, or this floor tag rather, that has type mark and description. These two labels, it's just sitting right beside each other. But because there's multiple lines of materials from Notepad, when I paste it in here, it puts all those different lines of text in there. So it's just a nice thing that you can do on your sections if you want. And the process for that is noted on page 10. Okay, page 11, there's some stuff there about customizing the project browser. I don't want to even bother with that. There was an exercise on page 14, not going to make you do that either. I want to give you folks some time to work on your term project and to deal with any questions you might have about your term project or anything we've talked about tonight. Okay, so that's it. I shall turn off the stream so these will be up on YouTube for your reference in the future.